So now let's now move on to the next topic, smart cities in the sky. We're very honored to have with us today Mr. Ricky Sanhu, founder and executive chairman of Urban Airport Limited, who will be presenting this topic virtually. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Ricky Sanhu. Let's give him a warm virtual round of applause.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
I think we can hear you, yes.
Good. Sorry. I am very virtual. Good morning and good afternoon, Hong Kong. It's very nice to be here. I've really enjoyed the topic so far. Smart cities is a very big topic. And as we all know, cities are, cities will be one of the most important parts of our lives. It's where we work, it's where we live, and the world's largest migration is happening right now, with more and more people moving to urban centres for better social equality and economic prosperity. And so how we build cities, or how we rebuild cities, is of crucial importance to all of our futures. And so my kind of background as an architect, I spent a lot of time working at a company called Foster & Partners on developing some of the most state-of-the-art buildings for our smart cities. But now I'm the founder and executive chairman of two transportation technology companies. And today I'm going to talk about one of those companies, which is called Urban Airport. An urban airport is focused on innovative transportation to help combat some of the problems all cities face around the world, which is traffic, which is causing a huge problem in terms of carbon, and transportation within cities is the cause of around 25% of all global emissions. And of those global emissions, of that 25%, which is given to the transportation sector, 75% of that is coming from cars and vans. And so moving people and moving goods is one of the biggest challenges all cities face. And so what we're focused on at Urban Airport is introducing new forms of sustainable autonomous transportation. And so this presentation is called a loop in the sky. And this is all about advanced air mobility. So there's a new future of sustainable aviation that is coming to cities. And there are various terminologies for this. And it's kind of a new topic, but we've been working on this for over 6 years now as one of the pioneering companies. And urban air mobility or advanced air mobility is all to do with electric, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And so this aircraft on screen here is an aircraft that is being developed by our partners, and they are called Supernal. And Supernal is a part of a Hyundai Motor Group car company, as we all know. So Hyundai Motor Group builds cars, but they have a huge vision, which is to provide the holy grail in transportation, which is that seamless, sustainable journey. And one of their companies now is focused on eVTOL and advanced air mobility. So we're very privileged to have them invest in us and to have them on our board and to work closely with them to help them integrate their new aircraft technology into the appropriate infrastructure within cities. And so, as we all know, when you get a bus, you use a bus stop. When you get a train, you normally frequent a train station. Same for a metro. And also when you get a plane somewhere, you have to go to an airport. And so this new type of technology, advanced air mobility, will also require advanced infrastructure to enable us, to enable goods and packages to be transported around our cities in the sky more sustainably, to help us decarbonize, to help us avoid traffic congestion so that we can all become more productive and improve air quality, but also importantly to make sure that we're not introducing something entirely new in isolation, but we're introducing a new form of transportation technology that is intermodal, that complements existing cities' transport systems. And advanced air mobility is a very exciting new sector. It's a new industry. We've been fortunate enough to be at the pioneering end of this. Billions of dollars have gone into the aircraft manufacturing and the aircraft development. And this aircraft, the Supernal aircraft, we were very pleased to host this aircraft in the world's first fully operational vertiport, which is the infrastructure, the mini airport that will host these services in the future. And so our role at Urban Airport is to make sure that we can have these vehicles land and take off safely and make sure that future passengers can board these vehicles safely, pilots can fly them safely, and we can integrate them in a very novel and unique way into existing cities, but also into new cities like at the line, but also in Paris, also in London. And so in order to do that, one has to understand how cities function, and one has to understand that cities are very, very different. And so part of our solution enables our infrastructure to be placed on rooftops, to be offshore floating, but also we can scale our technology either up or down, depending on the type of aircraft, depending on the number of aircraft required, but also scale them down right down to the size of a drone service port. So the image on the right-hand side is all about integrating urban airport technology into existing fulfillment centers, so we can enable an existing fulfillment center to be drone-enabled, which will help minimize the number of vans that are going to be required to move those goods around. And if you remember, 75% of all of transport emissions are from cars and vans. So we're tackling the van issue. And then on the left-hand side, you can see an urban airport there that's integrated within an existing airport, actually. So it's actually placed on the roof of an existing airport, and that is about eliminating some of those car journeys. And so we can't eliminate all of these journeys that are causing these carbon emissions, but what we can do, if we smartly integrate new forms of transportation technology and make sure they can be integrated into cities sustainably, we can move the needle to minimizing some of these emissions that we are all struggling with all over the planet. And that's really important for all cities. That's really important for Hong Kong. It's going to be really important in the US, which is going to be one of our biggest markets. And of course, in the Middle East, where I used to live. And I've been fortunate enough to travel to NEOM several times, and it's very exciting to hopefully be able to support NEOM and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in integrating for the first time a fully comprehensive advanced air mobility ecosystem. But this is not just for new cities. Advanced air mobility has been around in a way in the form of helicopters that we're all familiar with, but we're also familiar with helicopters being very expensive. And we're also familiar with helicopters being very noisy. And I guess we're also familiar with helicopters being a little bit dangerous, right? And so what eVTOLs enable us to all do is to integrate a new form of aerial transportation that we are somewhat familiar with, but we can do it in a much more affordable way. So eVTOL aircraft are, and there's various numbers from the OEMs who are developing these, but I think it's pretty fair to say that eVTOL aircraft are over 100 times safer, probably over 1,000 times quieter, and they'll be up to 75, 80% cheaper than an equivalent helicopter journey. So there are a lot of benefits in having an electric, quieter, safer, more resilient aircraft in our urban centers than helicopters. And so it's a very disruptive new form of advanced air mobility. And it's really very important that as this industry starts to emerge, that we make sure we do things, obviously innovatively in forms of how we integrate the new vertiports into cities, but we have to do things safely. And so we were very excited to be supported by the UK government, by UK Research and Innovation, partnered with Hyundai Motor Group and Supernal, to be able to build our first working prototype, our first vertiport, which starts to demonstrate our vertical airfield technology. So our vertical airfield technology is what you can see on the left-hand side. We have one of our drone operatives who's just loading up some cargo onto a drone, which can carry, if I remember correctly, 150 kilograms. So that's the weight of two of me. So quite significant payload. But the way that we can enable drone operations to happen in cities, and in this case, this urban airport is located in a car park, and its location is very, very central to a city. It's very central next to the railway station, it's next to downtown, and it's surrounded by towers. And so this is something which is very, very difficult to do, but it's also located within an international airport's airspace. And so you can see our command and control center, which was inside the urban airport, and you can see how we very carefully created our own air traffic zone for the aircraft that we were flying within and integrated within an existing airspace, which is managed by UK Civil Aviation. So all of this is done, with awards that we ended up receiving, which is fantastic, but it was done very carefully and in a very considered way, so that we can demonstrate how airports for advanced air mobility can be introduced into cities to alleviate the burden of cars and vans, improve productivity, and to provide social benefit to all, right? So if there are parts of cities which are disconnected, if there are parts of cities that are hard to get to, if there are parts of cities that will never really be able to afford a transport system which is sustainable, there's a solution that we offer where we can fix those gaps and we can connect cities using the air, so long as we can integrate these aircraft safely. And this is what we did in Coventry for the first time. And I think this image here shows quite clearly our location. So we're there right in the center, and you can see Supernal's aircraft on the takeoff landing position. And just to the north of the urban airport is downtown Coventry. To the right, where that red building is the main line railway station. And we're right in the middle of an urban core, which has around 500,000 people living and working. So very, very dense. And so we managed to integrate this new vertiport right in the middle of downtown Coventry, which has never been done before. And the reason why we can do that is because we are disrupting the way that aviation is designed, how aviation is built into our cities. And instead of doing the image on the left, which is using a lot of real estate, a lot of asphalt, which is being used in a traditional way, where an aircraft lands and the landing pad, it then taxis, which is moving to the stand. And then from the stand, passengers have to disembark and walk across the tarmac to exit. And then the aircraft has to be transported quite far for charging and for its maintenance. What we do on the right-hand side is to bring all of those functions of passenger processing, charging, maintenance, takeoff and landing, and we compact it into a vertical airfield, which means that our solution in terms of integrating advanced air mobility into cities recognizes that cities are expensive in the way that Gilad has just explained to us. You know, cities, the way that they're being developed and redeveloped, real estate is becoming, it's a very expensive part of our world. And so in order to, free up some land, which is very expensive in our cities, it's important to make use of it in the most efficient way possible. So instead of having, as a comparator example, if you had 8 aircraft, which is the bottom right image here, which is highlighted in red, if you had 8 aircraft standing side by side, much like a traditional airport where all the aircraft are, sitting outside on the tarmac, you would need almost 2 hectares of land. If you have 8 aircraft in an urban airport context, you would need just over 0.3 hectares. So it's 80% smaller. So this is a very smart and innovative way to integrate a new form of sustainable transportation into a city. And we think this is fundamental to any city development, no matter how big or how small. And depending on how big or how small, our solution allows for a scalable product. So you can start off, with 1 aircraft and 1 hangar, and then as demand grows, as your city grows, or as your citizens start to use this service more, then you can add more hangars, and you can even add more vertical airfields to provide greater capacity. So having this scalable infrastructure is something which is normally unachievable. To extend an airport or to extend a train station is very, very difficult, near impossible. But if we're putting in a new advanced air mobility system, then it's important that the infrastructure that supports that system is also scalable to kind of move with the growth. Now, some of the details here, which I won't dwell on for too long, but it's really important to understand that these aircraft are electric, and so they cannot just be left outside where the batteries can overheat, or the batteries or the thermal properties of the batteries in a colder climate like here in the UK, they can have detrimental impacts on the batteries. It's also important, therefore, to have a level of conditioned space where they're out of the dust or out of the heat or out of the cold. So our integrated hangars, either side of our vertical airfield, provide that. They also provide integrated charging. And of course, they also provide the shortest distance from which the aircraft, after landing, has to move for you to disembark or your cargo to be loaded or unloaded safely. And finally, for the pilot who's flying these aircraft in the early years, to give them the best situation awareness and to give them the most safest position from which to take off. Now, one of the other important things with this section here that we're showing through our urban airport is when you integrate any new form of transportation system into a city, the environmental permitting, one of the hardest things is the noise permitting, is what impact will this new mode of transportation have on the sound, on the acoustics, on the noise to this city. And one of the things that we've been working very hard on is to demonstrate that the perceived level of noise of this aircraft, and remember, we all look up, whenever we see a helicopter, we always look up because of their design. They are very noisy. These aircraft, because of their design, they're electric, they have multiple rotors and wings as well for energy and range to get the maximum out of their batteries. But when they take off with a different pitch, a different sound to helicopters, if they take off in an elevated position, 6 to 8 stories up, the perception of this new sound is vastly diminished. And so integrating new forms of infrastructure for new forms of transportation, again, has to be done in a sustainable way, which is not only environmental benefits, but also for the community and socio-economic benefits. We talked about cargo earlier. Smart cities, what they need to do is obviously continue moving people in a sustainable way, but they also need to move cargo in a much more sustainable way. And I'm going to go back to the 75% emissions that are added up and contribute to the 25% global transport emissions. Those emissions are made up of vans and cars. So 75% of transportation emissions are made up from vans and cars. And so whatever we can do to minimize the use of vans and cars, and by integrating new forms of aerial transportation, will just help move the needle towards decarbonization. And so our urban airport technology, we can scale it down, and we have 2 other products here, which are called the Docks Box, which plugs into loading bays and fulfillment centers to allow packages, as we start using e-commerce more and more and more, for packages to be drone enabled and sent straight downtown to your city location, which are the images on the right at the bottom. And these are our city boxes where drones can come in, they can land on our urban airport city boxes. We then autonomously process the cargo, and the goods are waiting at street level in your locker and you get sent a message on your phone saying, please go and pick up your package from locker X. Now in Coventry, we managed to do over 150 cargo drone flights in a very complex downtown location. And so whilst a lot of this might seem far-fetched to people who are being introduced to this technology, it's important to remind everyone that this has been implemented in the UK, and we created our loop in the sky, our own air traffic zone in the sky with Coventry International Airport, with UK Civil Aviation. And this is an industry that is coming. And we are calling upon smart city developers, real estate developers, city authorities to really embrace this topic in order to make sure that it's integrated into their cities in the way that they need it to be integrated. So what we don't want is to be running around once the electric car has been invented, trying to find ways of providing the infrastructure to support electric cars. So we've learned that lesson, I think, as a planet. Everyone's now rushing to put in the charging infrastructure. Let's learn from that and let's start to build in the advanced air mobility infrastructure for a new form of transportation that we will be seeing in our cities. And of course, smart cities need smart people. We have a great team at Urban Airport. And as I mentioned, we have Supernal, a Honda Motor Group company, on our board as well. And we're very grateful for that. And we have an amazing advisory board that makes up, our kind of smart team, which covers aviation, engineering, construction, airspace, former aircraft operators, pilots. And so it takes a village to move the needle, and it takes a lot of experience and credibility. And this is what we offer. And we're very excited and very confident that sustainable advanced air mobility will be coming to a city near you, and it will be integrated into existing forms of traditional transportation that you are used to. And it can cut a journey which by car would normally take 2 hours. That can be cut down to 20 minutes with a vehicle, a 4-seater vehicle that can fly 200 miles an hour with a range of 200 miles or so. So it's a significant improvement and addition to our compendium of transportation solutions, but it's very important for a fledgling early industry like advanced air mobility that we do integrate it in the most appropriate and sensible way. So I will pause there. Apologies for the slow start, but I hope that all made sense. Yeah, I look forward to continuing this conversation with you all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation.